Good morning, everyone. Day 2 of Oceanology, another day in paradise. So I'm from National Physical Laboratory. If you don't know what that is, it's a government-owned laboratory, primarily based in Teddington. We are the UK's National Metrology Institute, and amongst other things, we manage time for the UK. That's another separate presentation we can give. But today, we're here to talk about the MAP program. You might see the branding on the side here, and that's the Maritime Autonomy Assurance Testbed Program. First thing I'd like to point out is the partners on this program. Some of them will be very familiar with these. Lloyd's and MPL, obviously the lead partners on this, but we've got Hydrographic Office, Med Office, but also some fantastic Plymouth-based organisations, the University PML and the Freeport, as well as some other universities. And I want to talk a little bit about this program because our focus is very much how we develop assurance in the right way to support the maritime autonomy sector, and in particular supporting both the defence and economic priorities for the UK. So I'm not going to dwell too much on the opportunity because we all talk about the opportunity a lot, but we've had some clear demand signals, particularly last year through the Strategic Defence Review and government plans to invest much more in autonomy, particularly in the maritime space. And that's also been linked to the designation of Plymouth as the National Centre for Marine Autonomy, which is a really important milestone, not just for Plymouth, but for the UK as well, because it helps give a sort of central focus to some of the really key challenges and opportunities in this sector. Industrial strategy is also talking about the importance of developing new test evaluation capabilities around AI and autonomy, and things like the huge uplift we're seeing in offshore renewables. That is going to drive new demand signals in this space as well. However, and I think we all recognise this is not just a regulatory challenge. We can spend a lot of time talking about that. This is also about the challenge of how do we demonstrate to those people who want to procure, who want to operate these systems, that actually they're getting the thing they need, they're getting the performance they need. And we, with our partners Lloyd's, have been around the world and have seen many times that one of the biggest challenges is that commercialisation challenge. How do you ensure that people say, right, I'm paying for something, I'm actually getting what I need? And one thing we will say is that without this capacity to assure maritime autonomous systems, essentially you're going to see the exploitation of benefits significantly inhibited. So what is MAT? I've got a few slides on this, but essentially we're developing this program to develop a framework which is following a proportional structured and evidence-based approach. What does that mean? I'll explain that in the subsequent slides. But there's a few key fundamentals to the program. Firstly, that we are driven by clear economic, security and social imperatives. That's government policy there. We're also sponsored and supported by the National Shipbuilding Office and obviously part of Team Plymouth. This was done before the NCMA was announced, so they're now the NCMA. But we're underpinned by cutting-edge science, and we've actually really focused over the last few years in developing this program on how we integrate different themes in that science as well. Again, I've got another slide to explain that a bit more. Already mentioned some fantastic organisations, all really leading in their space in the UK. They're very specifically targeted objectives, which is very important in this space. It's very mission-free. But also we've done a lot of international collaboration. Indeed, some of our partners in Plymouth have been out with us in places like Singapore, and in Japan and other places, and Canada as well, working with us to develop research programs which are coming to fruition over this year and next. So let's talk a little bit more about the approach. I've got several colleagues who work on this here, Lloyd's, obviously the University and PML as well, so please reach out to them if you want to talk about more activities and what we're actually doing here. So firstly, we talk about an enabling framework, and this is really important. It's trying to create a structure that enables companies to do development and also companies to do procurement in a way that accelerates this whole process. So this includes things like standardized accessible test evaluation approaches, not just at test beds, but actually the question of what are you actually testing as well? What is that structure around the testing? And the important thing is how we objectively demonstrate capabilities and limitations. That's very important. Not having any ambiguity here. And in that is also enabling compliance to be assessed against concrete evidence. So confidence, consistency, proportionality and coherence is a cornerstones for the program. And one way we like to describe one of the key outcomes is really how we enable leading edge companies, of which there are many, but to prove their capabilities to customers who don't necessarily have the right or sufficient tools to make the right procurement decisions or to be able to compare or operate these technologies. And that's the barrier we're trying to overcome. So not just looking through a regulatory point of view, it's saying actually how do we accelerate and enhance that procurement decision making? And it's future-proof. That's the other key thing. So not just looking at the here and now, but saying how do we work with new technologies, more complex technologies, a much greater range and spectrum of capability as it comes online. So assurance through the life cycle, this is very important because it's not just about that point in time, which is certification. It's actually much more about how do you operationally assure these things through their life cycle, but also looking the other way, how do we enable companies to de-risk some of their investment by being able to demonstrate their performance and compliance through that R&D process. And a key thing to that is traceability through this whole process, but also simplification. So another output and outcome from the program was how we help simplify that description of what the need is, but also how do you actually demonstrate that that need can be met. So I've talked a little bit about this already. We have founded MAT on various different sort of areas of scientific and research activity, from things like how we actually demonstrate the true capabilities and limitations of systems, data quality, how you actually have the right test ecosystem, both in simulation and real world testing, what types of standards need to be developed, and we're doing a lot of work in that space at the moment, including internationally. The quality assurance, things like situational awareness and navigation decision making, obviously there's core fundamental challenges, but also looking at things like the infrastructure. What are the infrastructure requirements here? And also, not least, trustworthy AI or explainable AI, or however you want to describe it. I think this is the last slide. So our outputs, without running through all these in detail, but again, a certification strategy that is underpinned by robust and accessible requirements, tools, methodologies, and libraries. That's really important. That doesn't exist at the moment in any way, particularly in any standardized way, and it's very important we get there and do this internationally. That will enable trade, but it also enables the proper operation of these systems. Also, a digitally networked, validated, and integrated test and reference ecosystem. So Plymouth is our center point for this, but we want this to be something that enables testing around the country, where there's different capabilities, different environmental factors, etc. That's also supported by rapid and devolved trialing and regulatory sandboxing. That's going to be very important to enable companies to do what they need to do before they get to full certification. And then other things like the infrastructure KPIs, the training data strategy to support some of the big government customers and other areas. I'd just like to say, it was in the press recently, our first sensor test bed went live in Plymouth. Thank you very much to our partners, particularly PML, for helping us get out there. Lots of activity on the water. But that's now going live, but that's just the very first step. This is going to grow, it's going to grow in Plymouth, it's going to grow out many, many miles, surface and subsurface, enabling properly calibrated testing and referencing, and actually proper structured testing to actually enable people to accelerate, again, that assurance process. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for listening. I'm here, my colleagues are here, our partners are here, so please do pick this up with any of us. Thank you.